Let me tell you something you already know deep down in your heart. Emotions are powerful. They're part of what makes us human. Joy, sorrow, anger, fear. They surge in and out of us like waves in a storm. We cry when we're moved. We laugh when we're free. And we tremble when life knocks on our door with uncertainty. But just because emotions are real doesn't mean they always tell the truth. Just because we feel something doesn't make it fact. Just because fear rises doesn't mean danger is present. And just because you feel broken doesn't mean you are broken. There comes a time in every life, maybe even in yours right now, where you have to decide who's in charge, your emotions or your mind. You see, the mind was designed by God to lead, to guide, to be the lighthouse when the sea is raging. But too often, we hand the wheel to our feelings, and we wonder why the ship crashes. We let anger speak before our thoughts do. We let fear stop us before we ever try. We let sadness convince us that hope is gone. But I'm here to tell you, hope is never gone. God didn't give you a spirit of fear, but a power of love and of a sound mind. A sound mind, not a stormy one, not a trembling one, not a mind tossed by every emotional wave, but a grounded, stable, God-filled mind. Now, don't misunderstand me. Emotions are not your enemy. They're signals. They let you know something matters. They remind you that you're alive. But they are not steering wheels. They are not compasses. And they were never meant to be the captain of your life. That role belongs to your mind, renewed, sharpened, strengthened through faith and discipline. Think about this. How many times have you said something in anger that you regretted later? How many times have you stayed silent in fear when you knew you should have spoken? How many opportunities have passed you by because your emotions screamed louder than your logic? That is not weakness of the heart, my friend. That is simply the absence of mental leadership. Your emotions are loud, but your mind can be louder when it is trained, when it is clear, when it is rooted in something stronger than what you're feeling in the moment. Life will test you. People will provoke you. Situations will blindside you. But you will not win by reacting emotionally every time trouble comes knocking. You win when you pause, when you breathe, when you think. You win when you stop letting momentary feelings dictate permanent outcomes. You win when you remember that God gave you dominion, not over people, but over yourself, your thoughts, your actions, your mind. That is strength. That is victory. I've seen people with all the talent in the world lose everything because they couldn't master their emotions. I've seen families torn apart by a single moment of unchecked rage. I've seen potential buried under the rubble of insecurity and fear. And it all comes down to this, a strong mind can carry a weak moment, but a weak mind cannot carry a strong emotion. If you don't learn to lead your feelings, they will mislead you. And what does leadership look like? It looks like refusing to quit just because you feel tired. It looks like speaking peace when your soul feels like screaming. It looks like holding your ground with grace when the world is shaking under your feet. It looks like forgiveness in the face of betrayal because your mind knows what your emotions don't. That bitterness will poison you long after the pain is gone. Some people are waiting for life to get easier before they get stronger. But ease doesn't build strength. Resistance does. And when emotions rise, when the pressure comes, that's when your mind has to be stronger. That's when you step back and say, I feel this, but I will not be ruled by it. I am not my fear. I am not my sadness. I am not my pride. I am a child of God, and I have a sound mind. That's the moment when you start winning. Because when your mind is stronger than your emotions, you're no longer just surviving. You're living with purpose, with peace, and with power. So many of us pray for strength, ask for clarity, and cry out for courage. But we forget that strength doesn't just fall from the sky. It's not handed to you like a gift wrapped in ribbon. No, strength is formed in the fire. Strength is built step by step, decision by decision over time. It is not a flash of inspiration. It is a foundation of discipline. Mental strength doesn't come just because you want it. It comes because you train for it. You prepare for it. You choose it, especially when it's hard to choose. We live in a world that praises comfort. We are taught to avoid pain, escape pressure, and run from the things that challenge us. But let me tell you something, anything that grows must stretch. Anything that becomes strong must resist. Your mind is no different. You don't get mentally strong by staying safe. You don't develop emotional control by only facing easy days. You grow when the wind blows hard, and you decide not to bend. You grow when temptation calls, and you choose discipline. You grow when fear says, stop, but your spirit says, keep walking. You see, your mind is like a muscle, and muscles don't grow through rest alone. They grow through resistance. If you want to carry the weight your calling, your vision, your purpose, you've got to train for it. You've got to push past the voices in your head that say, I can't. I'm tired. I'm scared. I don't feel like it today. That's where training begins. When you do what's right even when you don't feel like it. And I want to remind you, God didn't ask us to walk by emotions. He said walk by faith. Faith isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And when you decide to keep showing up, keep praying, keep working, even when you're weary, that's mental strength in motion. That's training in progress. That's the kind of mind that can carry heavy things without breaking. People ask, how do I get stronger mentally? And I tell them you get stronger the same way you get closer to God, by doing it daily, through habits, through repetition, through self-control. Every time you choose to be calm instead of angry, you're training. Every time you forgive instead of holding a grudge, you're training. Every time you keep moving forward, when the pain tells you to stop, you're training. Mental strength isn't magic, it's maturity. And maturity is built in the secret places, not the spotlight. And friend, let me tell you, we need strong minds now more than ever. We're surrounded by distractions, surrounded by noise. Every screen, every feed, every voice pulling on your emotions, stirring your anxieties, testing your peace. You can't afford to let the world train your mind. You must train it through truth. You must train it through quiet, through stillness, through scripture, through prayer, through fasting sometimes, through waking up in the morning and saying, God, today I choose to be guided by your voice, not my feelings. You don't need perfect circumstances to get stronger. You need persistence. The enemy would love for you to wait until everything is just right. But you'll be waiting forever. Mental strength is not about what's going on around you. It's about what's going on within you. Are you feeding your mind with what is noble, what is true, what is pure, what is holy? Or are you letting your thoughts be shaped by fear, envy, bitterness, and comparison? Let me tell you, you won't accidentally become disciplined. You won't stumble into self-mastery. It's a decision every single day, even when you're tired, even when you're hurting, even when you failed the day before. You get up, you learn, you grow. That's training. That's strength. And there will be days where you feel weak, days where you break down and say, Lord, I don't know if I can do this again. And it's in those very moments that God reminds you, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. You're not training alone. You're not growing alone. God is shaping your mind with his spirit, refining your thoughts, strengthening your resolve. So don't give up just because it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. That's how you know it's working. Because mental strength isn't about avoiding struggle. It's about enduring it, learning from it, and rising through it. And once your mind has been trained to truth and tested by trials. There won't be a storm you can't walk through. There won't be a lie that can shake you. There won't be a setback that can stop you. And that, my friend, is where the real victory begins. There's a moment in every decision, just a moment, where we can either react or respond. It's a narrow space, but in that space lies all the difference between peace and regret, between wisdom and foolishness. That space is where the mind must rise above the emotion. That space is where you pause and let the truth lead you, not your temper, not your pride, not your fear. You win in life when you learn to think clearly before you feel deeply. You win when clarity leads and chaos follows behind. Now, don't hear me wrong. Your emotions are not evil. They are part of the way God wired you. But they were never meant to be in charge. The mind, shaped by His Spirit and grounded in His Word, is where decisions must begin. You've got to think first and then feel with understanding. If you reverse the order, you'll find yourself swept away by storms that were never meant to rule you. Far too often, people live in reaction. Someone says something hurtful and we strike back. A door closes and we spiral into despair. A delay happens and we panic like God is no longer in control. But the truth is, clarity doesn't come in reaction. Clarity comes in stillness, in reflection, in wisdom. That's why Scripture tells us, be still and know that I am God. Not be anxious and act fast. No, be still. Because when the soul is still, the mind can hear. And when the mind hears truth, it can lead with power. Let me ask you, how many moments in your life would have turned out differently if you had just taken a breath before you spoke? If you had just stepped back and said, what is actually true right now? Instead of letting frustration or fear take over. My friend, we've all been there, and it's not about being perfect. It's about learning to pause, to think, to wait just long enough for wisdom to rise above the noise. There is a kind of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't break things or slam doors or storm out of the room. It's the strength that sits quietly, sees clearly, and speaks carefully. That is the strength of a sound mind. That's what God has offered us. Not a spirit of fear, but of power of love and of sound judgment. Judgment that is not swayed by the heat of the moment. Judgment that isn't thrown off course by a wave of emotion. You know, clarity doesn't just protect your decisions. It protects your relationships. Because when the mind leads, you don't say things you can't take back. You don't act in ways that require repair. You love more patiently. You listen more carefully. You lead more faithfully. A clear mind becomes a steady light for others in the darkness. But let me tell you something you may already know. Clarity takes effort. It's not automatic. It doesn't happen when you're scrolling endlessly through noise or rushing through your day without reflection. Clarity requires that you step out of the emotional traffic and into the presence of God. It means asking, what's really going on in me right now? What is truth here, not just what I feel? Feelings can be misleading. They may tell you that you're alone when God is right beside you. They may tell you to give up when you're just one prayer away from a breakthrough. They may scream that you're not enough when God has already said you are His. That's why you cannot let emotions write your story. Let truth write it. Let your mind, anchored in His Word, hold the pen. There's a calm that only comes when your thoughts are stronger than your impulses. When your vision is clearer than your pain. When your purpose outweighs your panic. That's the calm that carried Jesus through the garden, through betrayal, through the cross. Not because He didn't feel, He felt everything, but He thought first. He was aligned with the Father. He knew the purpose, and the purpose gave Him clarity. That's the kind of strength we are called to carry. And in your own life, you'll face moments where emotions swell, when your flesh wants to lash out or shut down. But if you've you've trained your mind, if you've been in the Word, if you've been still before God, if you've practiced pausing instead of reacting, you'll have clarity in the chaos. You'll have wisdom where others only have impulse. And in those moments, my friend, you won't just survive, you'll lead, you'll build, you'll rise. Because when your mind is clear and your thoughts are stronger than your feelings, that's when the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. There's a price to everything in this life. Some things cost us time, some cost us money, and others cost us peace. But there's one thing that will always cost more than we think it will: an emotional outburst. When you let your emotions take the driver's seat, when you give them free rein without guidance from a strong and steady mind, you may win the argument but lose the relationship. You may speak your mind but wound someone's heart. You may feel justified in the moment, but long after the moment has passed, the damage remains. We've all seen it. Some of us have lived it. Words flying like arrows in a moment of anger. Decisions made in fear that later lead to regret. Silence held out of pride when humility would have healed. These aren't just passing missteps. They are costly. Because emotions, when left unchecked, don't build, break. They don't plant, they uproot. And in the heat of the moment, if your mind isn't strong enough to hold the line, emotions will spend what wisdom would have saved. Let me tell you something you may not hear very often. Being emotional isn't weakness. Feeling deeply is not a flaw. Even Jesus wept. Even he felt agony in the garden. But he didn't let that agony decide his next step. He didn't let fear dictate his purpose. He felt, but he chose. That is strength. That is power under control. That is what it means to have a mind stronger than your emotions. We live in a world where reacting is celebrated. People say, speak your truth. Say what's on your heart. Don't hold back. And yes, honesty has value, but it must be filtered through wisdom. Because truth without grace cuts like a sword. Feelings without direction scatter like the wind. We must learn, brothers and sisters, that just because you feel it doesn't mean you must say it. Just because it hurts doesn't mean you must hurt back. Just because you're afraid doesn't mean you must run. I've counseled people who have lost jobs, not because they lack talent, but because they couldn't control their tongue. I've seen marriages teeter on the edge, not because there was no love, but because resentment was louder than reason. I've seen people forfeit their calling because they listened more to the storm inside than to the still small voice of God. That is the true cost of an unguarded moment. The Word of God tells us that the tongue has the power of life and death. And in those moments when emotions rise, what you say, what you choose, what you do, those are seeds you plant. And the harvest will come. If you plant bitterness, you'll reap isolation. If you plant wrath, you'll reap destruction. But if you plant patience, if you plant mercy, if you plant humility, you will reap peace, restoration, and strength that doesn't crumble in the storm. And I believe someone listening needs to hear this. You are not too far gone. Maybe you've made emotional choices in the past. Maybe you've hurt people with your words, walked away too soon, burned bridges you now wish were still standing. But the grace of God is greater than your worst moment. Redemption is not just for the sinner who doesn't know the truth. It's for the believer who forgot how to use it. There's a better way, a higher road, a steadier walk. You've got to train your mind to lead when your heart wants to explode. And how do you do that? By spending time in the presence of the one who is peace. You anchor your thoughts in his word. You practice silence when your flesh wants noise. You speak softly when anger tempts you to shout. You stop and pray when pride tells you to win. You choose to protect your future more than you defend your ego. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's strength. I say this with love. If you don't master your emotions will master you. They will sabotage your progress, derail your peace, and waste your energy. You'll spend your life cleaning up messes that could have been avoided with one quiet moment of pause. And I don't want that for you. God doesn't want that for you. He called you to live with power, with love, and with a sound mind. That sound mind is your anchor in the waves. It's the gatekeeper of your words, the guardrail for your decisions, and the compass for your actions. And when you learn to pause, to pray, to think before you speak, and when your mind is calm and steady while the world around you trembles, then, my friend, you're no longer just reacting to life, you're leading it. Discipline is not a word people like to hear these days. It sounds heavy. It sounds demanding. But let me tell you, discipline is not your enemy. It is your ally. It is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. It is the path that connects emotion to endurance, feeling to faith, desire to destiny. Without it, even the greatest intentions fall flat. Without it, emotions run wild. But when discipline leads, when the mind says, "Yes, Lord," even when the body says, "I'm tired," that's when real transformation begins. You see, every one of us wakes up with emotions. Some mornings you wake up feeling strong. Other days you wake up with doubt. Some days peace covers you like a blanket. Other days fear whispers before you even open your eyes. And if you live by how you feel, you'll be tossed around like a leaf in the wind. But discipline doesn't ask you how you feel. Discipline says, "We'll keep going anyway." Discipline says, "We walk by faith, not by sight, not by feelings, not by mood, not by convenience." It's easy to follow through when everything inside you agrees, when you're motivated, when the sun is shining and the doors are opening. But discipline kicks in when motivation dies down. Discipline shows up when the feeling is gone, but the commitment remains. And that's where victory is born, not in emotion, but in decision. That's where the mind must be stronger than the moment. There are things God has placed inside of you, dreams, assignments, purposes, that will never be unlocked through emotion alone. They require obedience. They require discipline. And not just on the good days, especially on the hard ones, especially when you don't feel like praying, especially when forgiveness feels impossible, especially when quitting looks easier than continuing. That's when your mind must be anchored in something deeper than your feelings. Let me remind you, Jesus didn't go to the cross because he felt like it. He went because he was committed. He endured because his mind was fixed on the joy set before him. And if the Son of God had to wrestle through emotion in the garden, sweating drops of blood, asking if there was another way, then don't think for 1 second that your walk will be free from struggle. But the power comes when you say, "He did, not my will, but yours be done." That is discipline. That is surrender. That is strength. People want the fruit of discipline without planting the seeds. They want peace but won't set boundaries. They want clarity but won't turn off the noise. They want strength but won't push through resistance. But there's no shortcut to this kind of life. God honors discipline because discipline honors him. It says, "Lord, I don't serve you only when I feel you. I serve you because I trust you. I obey because I believe you are faithful, even when my emotions are not." And don't think discipline is about being cold or mechanical. No, true discipline is full of love. It's full of devotion. It's full of purpose. You get up early to pray not because God will love you more, but because you love him enough to seek him first. You hold your tongue in conflict not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to protect what matters most. You show up again and again, not to prove something to the world, but because you made a promise to God and to yourself, and you intend to keep it. And here's what's beautiful: the more you walk in discipline, the less power your emotions have over you. That fear that used to paralyze you, it begins to shrink. That anger that once boiled over, it finds peace. That laziness, that insecurity, that doubt, they begin to lose their grip. Why? Because discipline trains the mind to see truth even when the heart is trembling. It teaches you to act on what's right, not just what's easy. And over time, it becomes who you are. This isn't about pretending emotions don't exist. It's about putting them in their rightful place. They can ride in the car, but they don't get to touch the wheel. Your mind, renewed by truth and disciplined by faith, drives the direction of your life. And when you build your life on that, when your mind leads your emotions instead of the other way around, there is no storm that can steal your peace, no trial that can steal your purpose, and no feeling that can keep you from finishing what God called you to do. Because discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about standing when everything you wants to sit down. It's about loving when bitterness feels easier. It's about walking by truth even when the world says, follow your feelings. And when you choose discipline over emotion again and again, that's when heaven moves and victory comes.